Right, we will be starting a new topic this term. We are in term 4, cybersecurity. Today is lesson 1, you and your data. We've got various versions of it, so it might be called A2 Jamboard, but lesson 1, you and your data. We'll be going through the slides, but there is a fair bit of stuff in here. There's a worksheet, there's a Jamboard with a mind map that I want you to edit, and then there's another little mini worksheet at the end. And also there is a question for you to answer. And this one you should spend a few minutes on. I'll introduce them as we get to them, as we go through the slides. So lesson 1, you and your data. Today we will be talking about the difference between data and information. We'll be looking at online services and what data they collect on you and identify what happens to it. And then lastly, talking about the Data Protection Act, which is designed to keep us all safe. So what we're looking at here before we get started is there's a website called ThreatMap, and there's a link on here, but I've actually attached the link in the Google Classroom, and if you go to that link you'll see something like this. And these are all cyber attacks that are being detected around the world. There are monitoring systems that are constantly in place, and this is a kind of visualization of that data. And the question is, what are they trying to get access to? What are they trying to steal? In the most general sense, what they are trying to steal is data. What they're going to do with it, that can vary. What sort of data, that can vary. But in the most general sense, they are trying to get access to data. And so we need to understand the importance of data, what value it has, and how human actions can make data more vulnerable. We will, through the topic, look at common cyber attacks and the measures put in place to protect us from those cyber attacks. So that's what the whole unit will look like. So today we're just talking about data and information, and then eventually the Data Protection Act. But data is raw facts and figures. Information is taking those raw facts and figures and processing them into something slightly more meaningful. And so we have an example here. We have some raw facts and figures. These are marks from a test, but the information is that these are scores from a test where the pass mark was 35, and I can tell that John will need to resit the test, and that the average score is 40. So that is kind of more information because I've taken the raw stuff on the left and processed it. Not done a lot of processing, but I've got some conclusions. I've got some things that I now know. So there is a subtle difference there. So why is customer data valuable to businesses? So there is a worksheet, the A1 worksheet, and the customer has bought the following items: a tent, some dog toys, and a fitness trackers. And what I want you to do in your worksheet, the A1 worksheet, is write down 3 assumptions that you can make about that customer based on those purchases. Now, you might say that they could be buying them from other people and you don't really know if that's a kind of consistent thing, and that's perfectly true. But let's assume that this is 3 things that they've bought for themselves. What assumptions can you make? If you made the wrong assumptions as a real business and later on they never bought anything like that again, that kind of thing can be figured out. But based on those 3 things, what can you assume about that person? And then once you've made those assumptions, you've then got a series of other items: DVD player, running shoes, a torch, subscription to an online TV on demand service, and a travel book. Would you recommend these items? For each item, decide whether you would recommend it and why you might recommend that item. So if someone's bought a tent, dog toys, and a fitness tracker, might you recommend them some running shoes? Possibly. Why would you recommend them running shoes? Would you recommend them a DVD player? No, yes, don't know. Why might you or might you not? So think about each of those items with relation to this customer. So then the next thing we're going to look at is the sort of data that social media companies might collect. We're picking on social media companies just because they collect a lot, and they collect a lot of very personal stuff. And so I have made a Jamboard, which if we open that up, should look like this. and you will each get your own copy of this that you can fiddle around with. And I've got each of these boxes that has the 3 bullet points. I need you to replace like example 1, example 2, x3 with actual examples, okay? So personal information, you might have like, you can actually edit the text here, kind of date of birth or name or whatever, right? So just replace those bullet points. User behavior might be a bit of a trickier one, so places you visit or groups that you belong to. So these are the groups you belong to, stuff like that. So you're going to edit this and replace those bullet points with your answers, the things that they collect about you. And we're kind of categorizing it with these broad categories. Here are some examples. I'm going to jump over that because I want you to have a bit of a think. How do you think social media companies make money if they are free to use? Largely, it's based on advertising. And how do they advertise things? Well, they use your data to target those adverts. So the next thing we're going to do is look at some of the privacy policies for these companies. Now, for this, I have created a question, L1 question 1. What data do these companies collect about their users? So in this question, I want you to pick one of the companies, have a look at their privacy policy. I've put the privacy policies in as links here. Just pick one, have a few minutes, just read through and figure out what things they're collecting about you, and then just write those things in as the answer to this question. You'll be able to see each other's, so you can sort of make it a bit of a discussion and you can see what other people are writing. And so this is, if we were in class, this would have been one of those you sit and read and then hands up type of things. So pick one of the privacy policies. Make sure you tell me which privacy policy you're talking about, which company of Snapchat, Instagram, Google and Facebook you have picked, and then list the things that they are collecting about their users. There's a video here in terms of the impact of data theft. I've linked that video in the classroom. It is there. You can watch that after you've watched this video. And the question is, if cybercriminals successfully stole data from these companies, who would suffer and in what way? And that will come up on the worksheet, which we'll get to in a sec. In fact, let's have a quick look at that now. So yeah, so this is the other worksheet. I know it says like exit ticket, don't worry about that. What I want you to do is name 3 items of data that a company might hold on you that would help form your profile. And then based on that kind of video about the consequences of loss, give one potential consequence to you. And I should really highlight this. A consequence to you as an individual if cyber criminals had access to the data that you list up here. So you might say address is one of these items, okay? And what potential consequence if a cyber criminal gets your address? Fill that in. 3, give one potential consequence to the company, right? So if the company is storing your address and that gets leaked, what potential consequences are there for the actual company? And I want you to think about that and type some of those in as well, okay? So that's mainly based on that video. Now, lastly, we just need to talk about the Data Protection Act. So the Data Protection Act that's there to keep us safe, they have to abide by the following principles when storing personal information. It must be used fairly, openly, and in accordance with the law. Used for a specific reason. So if, like, the school holds data on you, and they hold data on you so that they can keep you safe in the building, they know things about you so they can look after you properly, and they can serve your education. We're not allowed to go and use that data for other reasons without sort of asking you again. It's only allowed to be used for school purposes. It needs to be accurate and up to date, so we actually get you to sign little bits of paper every now and again to verify that it is accurate and up to date. Only kept for as long as it is needed, and it needs to be protected. We can't just take all your data and say thanks very much and leave it somewhere that anyone could read it, so we have to protect the data. And you have rights as a data subject. So within the school, you are a data subject, but you are also a data subject for many other organisations. And you are allowed to make updates to your data, have it deleted, stop an organisation from processing it, transfer it to a different organisation, and you can just find out how it's being used. So if you don't know and you're curious, you can ask, and you can access the data that an organisation has about you. You also have rights, just as sort of addendum, about the automated decision making that happens without human involvement. So you're allowed to sort of understand what is done, and any kind of profiling that happens, you're allowed to find out about that specifically for you. So then you can go look at the exit ticket, which we looked at before. This was this worksheet. So in summary, this lesson has the A1 worksheet, which is the guy with the dog tracking stuff. Talk about targeting adverts at him. The personal information and the potential consequences if it goes missing, and the categorizing, so listing some of those data items and really identifying those things. And then you are, oh, and also the question, where's the question? The privacy policy, and then you are done.